Hymns for Worship is an online music resource that seeks to make hymns come alive. It provides practical ideas, helpful tools, and creative strategies to help Christian musicians lead and teach with confidence. It has well-researched hymn stories and piano accompaniments to help worshippers sing with understanding. It has a collection of printables, like hymn worksheets, piano arrangements, and digital resources to help you do your best work. If you like today's episode, you may explore more related topics on www.hymnsforworship.org.
Glad to be here with you this morning. For me, I'm sorry. We have a little bit of time difference. We were sharing this morning with Irene. I think for you it's a late evening. For us, it's really 5 a.m. So we're starting our day with this presentation. Let's hope that what we share today it will encourage some of you to start a church ensemble or to make it survive. So let's start with our presentation today. We have mainly threefold purpose for today. I would like to encourage you to start a church ensemble. If you don't have one, you probably know some people around your church who can play some instruments, and you can probably invite them to start playing with you. We would like also to remind you to nurture your church musicians. We're trying to make them feel comfortable and also be willing to worship with you. And of course, we'll share some ideas that we have collected during our time here in Mexico, and we'll hope to share them with you. How you can adapt them to your own environment. So let's see. Before you start any church ensemble or any church activity in your church, in your local church, it's a wise idea to invite your pastor and or minister to your and share with him or her your ideas. The relation between the pastor and the music minister is vital for the development of the church spiritual life. Sometimes you start with the wrong foot in this, and you hear often some feuds between the senior pastor and the worship leader or the musicians in the church. I'm a musician and I know some things about this. I have my share of with some pastors where I have been ministering, and some pastors with me. So I will recommend, before you start any church activity, to involve. This is a wise idea. When we look at the Bible and look at the music ministry developed in ancient Israel during King David's and Solomon's reign, we always get amazed on how big this ministry was. It involved around 1,000 members, musicians, playing and worshiping the Lord. And sometimes I ask, how come get there today with all available resources and all musical developments? How come we can't get to a 4,000, let's say just to 100 in our congregations? Well, a key element to that success had to do with the collaborative approach they had and their willingness to work together, both musicians and leaders. King David was a musician, and he was also a person who was willing to share his ideas and to involve other musicians with him. So that's a key thing to do before you start. Start with the right foot, involve your pastor, your minister, and in a few minutes we'll talk about more of this. But it's a good thing to know that the spiritual life of the church, in any aspect, is it should be led by the senior pastor, not by the worship leader. The worship leader should be only the one helping, aiding the senior pastor, and not vice versa. So the first thing to do, involve your pastor and minister. It's also a good idea to define what style you are going to use in your church. I don't know what type of church style does your church or pastor like the best, or think the best for the congregation. But I know that before you start anything, it's important to involve your pastor and define the style you're going to use in your church, because this will guide you in the process of planning and making more relevant your music to your congregation. So it's wise idea to think about this before you start anything on music in your church. Does your church like high church music? Is it more comfortable with it? Last week, I think you talked about something like this. In church, we kind of divide our music into high church music, where this is more like classical defined music or style. This is one more typically like in an orchestra setting or brass ensemble music, usually playing hymns from the past. But there's also a trend in music worship in like I don't know how to define this specific term, but it's more like worship style, where there are more guitars, bass involved, or there can also be some blended worship which will include both of them. I'm not saying it's good or bad, any of these styles. I'm just saying that before you start, you should define what style you are going to use in your congregation. This is important because you're probably thinking on a specific style in your mind, and your pastor might be thinking other, and your congregation totally different approach. So it's a good start, as I said before. Involve your pastor, define your style, and don't forget about the congregation. To do this, you should, I recommend to survey your congregation. It's wise to talk to your pastor and make a survey for your congregation where you will find the needs they have, the mindset they have about worship and music in the church. We don't want to have problems in our church because of the type of music you are trying to get them to enjoy or to sing with. So it's another thing that we will recommend to serve your congregation. Another thing that I think a good thing to do before you start any church music activity is to call your musicians, contact them before you ask them for help. I don't know how many of you will feel like, I don't know, I feel sometimes like used when it comes to music in church. The pastor sometimes, pastors will sometimes only contact me when they need help. They ask me I was doing during the week, or they don't call if I was sick. They only want to know if I'm going to be available to play for them in their church, in church worship. So it's kind of like I'm just a tool for him or her, and I don't feel comfortable with that approach. But when the pastor or the music minister calls ahead of time, asks me how I am, visits me, prays with me, I tend to say always yes to any of them, on any of his or her ideas on music in our church. And I think it's a good idea to contact your musicians before asking them to help. This should also include taking care of your musicians' health, calling them to see if they're in good health to play. And it's also a good idea in a spiritual realm that we will talk about in a few minutes. Also, it's a good time if you haven't have a church ensemble right now or any musicians available, of your members, your congregation members in private lessons. I have known this time of COVID-19, it was a good time to practice, but I know some professional musicians, some friends of mine, who use all this time of COVID-19 time to practice. But I also know a lot of non-professional musicians, the ones who are usually available to play with your church, will not practice at all during this time. So it will be a good idea to invite them to start practice, or to involve them in private lessons if they're not ready to play, or to reach the level you are willing to take them in the church setting. So another thing that I like to say right here is to reach musicians around the globe that can help you by providing ideas, music, videos, instructions, something like you're doing right now. Irene called me during this month ago to share some ideas with all of you, and I was thinking to myself, here in Mexico, we don't have that much contact outside Mexico, mainly because of our language, right? We feel more comfortable talking to people right here in Mexico and in our community. But if we reach outside our own environment and we have this technology today that we can share ideas in Facebook Live, but we can also make a phone call to some friends. And as I'm sharing with you, I'm really sure that some people that are right here in the presentation are willing to share ideas with you about how they're doing in their own environment, and probably their ideas will help you to develop the church ensemble you're willing to have. So don't be afraid. Reach musicians around the globe. Write their names down. I'm offering myself also, if some of you after today's presentation would like to add me as your contact, I will be willing to be in contact with you and share what I do. You share what you do, and we will work things together for a better worship experience in our own church. So that's for our, we'll say, introduction. Before we start, the first thing that I would like to share in terms of church ensemble is to plan ahead of time. what we're saying about what we're trying to say here is that everything that you want to be developed in your church should be planned. I have been invited to participate in church services where there's nothing planned. You don't know what's the hymn that is going to be played that day, or if that hymn is going to be only the first stanza or the complete hymn. You're basically being asked to guess what is going to happen in the church service, and that's a really bad approach to any music activity. If you don't plan anything, you are aiming to fail. So everything that you do in church should be planned, and also you will have to. I will recommend this in this part to establish an ideal of what you want to have in your church, and aim higher than you expect it to be. If you have only two musicians, two brass players, for example, you have only two trumpet players in your church, and you want to start a church ensemble, you might think this as a problem, because what kind of an ensemble you might think you'll be with two trumpet players? Well, you'll be amazed how big you can get with only two trumpet players. But you have to give yourself opportunity to think higher of that. See them as an opportunity. See your trumpet players as developing musicians who can help you bring along some other brass players, and don't think only of them as two of them, but as a brass ensemble in your head in the future. Because if you only close your mind to what you have in available of musicians in your church, you will only develop the mindset you have in your church. If you only think you have two musicians, you will always have two musicians and never grow. So aim higher, work towards your ideal, but always think in the reality. While the ideal will aim your goals higher, the reality will ground your feet and will let you think objective on whatever you are trying to reach in your church. And about deciding your goal, I think it's a wise idea to follow Paul's recommendation on the ideal that any activity in the church have to follow. In 1 Corinthians 14, verse 26, Paul says, "What then shall we say, brothers and sisters? When you come together, each of you has a hymn or a word of instruction or a revelation, a tongue or an interpretation." He's just telling the Corinthians church to ask themselves what to do in a worship service. And he's just listing all the available activities: music, preaching, revelation, and spiritual gifts, tongue or interpretation. And he says everything must be done so that the church may be built up. So in Paul's mindset, everything that happens inside worship service should help the church to be built up. And this is very important if you're doing or trying to have a church ensemble. You have to be worried about that your work on the church will help them be built up. That's why you have to survey the congregation. That's why you have to include your pastor. because the building of a church, and not the church building, but what Paul's talking about here is to enrich, to construct, to build up your church members. So it's a wise idea that you keep that in mind. Is this church ensemble is going to build my church or not? And if you are take that path of building your church, God will bless your church, your music ministry. So another thing to consider today about planning ahead of time is to start small, but be willing to grow. Once you start church ensemble, and I can tell you from experience, everyone gets, if done properly, more people on your congregation will start asking, hey Abner, what should I do to become a member of your church ensemble? Because I want to play for the Lord. So you might start with 2 or 3 musicians, but soon another musicians will follow you, and I will tell you that this will always happen. If you put your plans into the Lord, He will and ask for His guidance. He will bless you, your church through you, and whatever you're planning right now on starting or doing in music in your church, it will grow. So start small, but be willing to grow. Another thing that I want to share with you today is to schedule every part of your rehearsal. This is very important. As I said before, it's really frustrating when you don't have anything planned, and when before getting to any practice or rehearsal with any church ensemble, it's very important to follow some guidance about your country's health protocol. I know for sure that we have people here in our meeting right now that are from different countries. So, and every country has their own health protocol. If you're asking your musicians to start a group of musicians to practice for this coming weekend, please follow your country's health protocol, and don't get too excited about. In some countries, for example, here in Mexico, we just, in our state, in Sonora, we are ready to be, to reunite again on our worship service with some health protocols. But here in Mexico and here in my community, more often people don't follow the health protocol of our own country. So I don't know if you can ask for the Lord's blessings if you're not willing to protect your musicians' health during your beginning or reopening of your church ensemble. It's very important to follow your country's health protocol because you are aiming to take care of your musicians' health, both physically and spiritual. About the musician's health, I want to share with you, I think it's right there, it's this web page that I found. It's www.acs.org. It will look something like this. Hope this is projecting there. It's a web page that would share COVID-19 resources, and ideas on how, where to practice church music in groups. So it's a good thing to visit that web page and have ideas on how to take care of your musicians' health. But I'm also trying to invite you that always think of your musicians as church members also. And your musicians are also in need of spiritual things. If you're planning to take part of a church ensemble or a church activity, any of it, you need the Lord to guide you, to guide all of your life, not just the church presentation or the specific hymn that you're going to accompany. It's important to let your musicians know that the Lord is interested in their lives, not only in their music abilities, but in the wholeness of them. So take care of your musicians' health, follow your country's health protocol, but ask your musicians or your church ensemble musicians to have a daily routine of Bible study, of singing themselves before coming to any church activities or rehearsals that you will have with them. I will mention right here from this site that I'm sharing with you. Good ideas from that side is to have large ensembles divided into smaller performing groups, and this is a good idea if you have a lot of musicians in your church, or you were used to be having a large ensemble in your church. Probably coming back to your churches will be a good idea to divide your church ensemble into smaller ensembles and to schedule them so they can be playing probably one church service, yes, not the other one, just to schedule them so they can play and practice with you and play with them. About planning ahead, your musicians should know what are they going to practice ahead of time. It's a good idea to have a schedule or a calendar where you share with them what are you going to be doing each time you gather with them to practice. What warm-ups are you going to use? What hymns you're going to be playing? And as we said earlier in our speech, define what style and what are you going to do. For example, you might be willing only to be accompanying hymns. Then you should tell your musicians what hymns you're going to be playing that day. And if you are deciding to play more, they should know ahead of time. Especially this scenario, it's better with non-professional musicians. They will need time to practice their own part before coming to rehearsal. Something that I noticed a lot with my professional musicians friends is that they will not come to your practice if you don't share with them what are they going to do, because they think it's a waste of time not knowing what is going to happen. So plan ahead, let your musicians know what hymns, songs you're going to practice ahead of time. And another thing is to set the date you are going to play those hymns. Not only what music you are going to practice that day, but when is that music going to be played? That's an important thing to let your musicians know ahead of time, because it will also make you decide if that specific hymn you're practicing on that day it's ready to be played in church or not. So it's very good idea to plan ahead of time. Another thing to do with your church ensemble is to arrange and adapt. What I'm trying to share here is that you should be able to arrange all the music you buy from or you get to your group. You can maintain things simple with as simple as 4-voice harmony, and just arrange or adapt those 4-voice harmony to your group, or to make a full orchestra arrangement. Whatever you do, you have to adapt all that music to your specific group. If you buy some music from the internet or some web pages that specializes on church music, you will notice that a lot of that music will have substitute parts. That is because even the music publishers know that not all the instruments they're selling, included on that arrangement are available on every church setting. So you have to know that all the music needs to be adapted to your group, to the specific group you're leading. And also it's important that you will reuse your music. Sometimes when you're planning on leading church ensemble music, you feel like drowning because there's so much music to prepare for every church service. Well, you can always reuse your music. You don't have to have something new or everything new on every church worship service. You can reuse if you use, for example, if you use 4 hymns today, you don't have to choose another 4 hymns for the next church service. You can pick two of those hymns that you sing today and repeat them the next week. No one will tell you anything against this idea, because also the congregation needs to get familiar with hymns. So sometimes it's a wise idea to repeat and reuse music. Another thing is, this is something really important to talk with your pastor and congregation, is to invest in your ensemble. So it's a good idea to, before starting any church ensemble, or if you already have one, to list all your needs, your real needs. One thing that you always need will be sheet music. You will always need music arrangements. So always have a checklist of what music you would like to play with your ensemble, and it's wise to have a list of the sheet music that you will have, that you want, because you will never know if someone will be on your congregation will be willing to buy that music for you, or to ask you, hey, Abner, I have a special offering that I want to give to the Lord, but I want to use it in your church music ensemble. So what do you need? And you have to always have an answer for that. You always have to say, hey, I need this music. You can buy it in this specific site. Do you need instruments? Then you should have that on your list. Do you need music notation software to arrange and adapt? Then you have to have them in your list. Probably some of you are not in your countries are not allowed to gather in your church building for church service. Then you might be able to do a church ensemble on video. by pre-recording your music, then you will need a video editing software, and that costs, of course, for everything there's a freeware version, but sometimes the more complex the music gets, the more editing will be added to the workflow. So you will need a video editing software. So if you need it, list it. You will need probably an audio recording software if you're not allowed to be in your church building. And also, if you have, and if you're allowed to gather with your musicians, you'll be benefit of an audio recording software. So list it. So always have this list available because you don't know if your pastor probably will get all excited with your church ensemble and will go to a conference, your church conference, and president, and ask him to give some resource from his department to your church ensemble. And then the money will be available to you, but you will not know what you need until you write it down. As I say, always involve your pastor and congregation, because they will be always willing to give if you include them, and will also be willing not to support you if they don't feel involved in your ministry. And they will also help you to ask for resources. And talking about resources, about a couple of years back, about 2 years ago, I received this as a gift, and I want to give you as a gift for today, only for the people who are here. I'm going to share you with you. I'm going to stop sharing right here. I'm going to share with you some church arrangements for Ensemble, only for the people here, and just for a few hours. Here, let me share with you. You will do right here. Sure. I will share with you some songs for praise and worship. It's from a company known as Praise Charts, and you'll have access to some music scores that you can adapt for your church ensemble. So if you're willing to accept that gift, I will share with you in the chat section of this group in a few seconds the address for you to have it. That will be my ideas for today, and I will let copy and paste that web address. I don't know if we can open this time for questions. If some ideas were not clear enough, I would like to also to clarify them or provide, or probably you will have some ideas that you can share with me, and we can open that time for this, JB. And it's already shared in the chat section. You can copy paste it. It will open a Google Drive folder, and hope it can work for your church ensemble. Very beautiful.
Okay. So with that said, I invite everyone to write your questions, or if you have any comments, or if you want to share anything, you can type in the chat box. If you're watching on FB Live, then you can also comment it there, and we will also read it.
Yeah, someone, I think Beryl, is asking if we can share again the link that we shared. Sure, it will be here. Let me paste it for you. There it is. And for you who were looking, right here I'm sharing the actual link for the resource that I'm sharing with you. Only will be available for a few hours. I will stop sharing it in just because you're here. I'm going to share it with you. There's a Christmas arrangements and there are praise hymns arrangement, and the praise hymns are very famous ones, very known melodies. Amazing Grace, Hallelujah, Be Thou My Vision, Blessed Assurance, Christ the Lord is risen today, Crown Him with many crowns, and many others. They all have praise band setting, rhythm, and also we'll have an orchestra, an orchestration. So if you are having either of them, it will work for you. So again, it's going to be only available for a few hours, and hope it will work for you. While we're sharing these resources, I also want to talk about just a few words about the web page that I shared also before about the COVID-19 resources for reopening or music ensembles. So you will be interesting on this site. It has a lot of resources, a lot to read about reopening any music ensemble. There is another resource that you might find good for you. It's the Seventh-day Adventist hymnal for you who are Seventh-day Adventists. This site has all the lyrics of the Seventh-day Adventist hymnal in English, and a lot of them have. When you click on any of them, it will tell you if they have a MIDI file available that you can use in your music notation software, and it's easy to adapt from MIDI to the music notation software and adapt to your church to begin. And it's the site is Adventist Hymnal. You just write it like this. It's traditionalmusic.co.uk, and look for the Adventist Hymnal. It will have it available for you. And the digitalhymnal.org, it's also basically the same thing. The hymns that are here are from the Seventh-day Adventist Hymnal, and we'll have also a MIDI file already split in a 4-voice harmony that you can copy and paste just and create your own adaptation of the hymns. Another similar to it, it's the Cyber Hymnal. This is a non-Adventist site, but it includes a lot, basically all the hymns that we sing. Also, they have the MIDI files available once you click on the specific hymn that you're looking for, and also has a link for the Noteworthy Composer program, which is a freeware music notation software that might work for you and will help you. Another thing that I want to share with you is the Celebration Hymnal. This you have to buy, but I will highly recommend this hymnal if you are a musician. Let me say, probably the title will sound a little bit of misguided to you. It's a celebration hymnal, but it's basically a hymnal, and it has all these available resources with it that you can buy. It has the right here. It has an arrangement for every hymn that it has, the parts available, and also I was looking for the score. The conductor score. It has the conductor scores in PDF. It's a little bit high the price, but it will work a lot. It will ease a lot of your work in your church and music ensemble. I highly recommend that you buy this. The hymnal has the four-part harmony, but you have available all the parts in a PDF format if you wish to buy them. Another thing, it's the praise charts that I already. The site is praise charts, and they will have a lot of more contemporary songs. They have also traditional hymns arranged for orchestra, or for worship groups, contemporary groups. They have both versions, so you can hear them or buy them from them. As I said, it's going to be. I highly recommend that you click on it and start downloading, because we only available for a few hours this day. The praise hymns arrangements that I share with you in the chat section. And another, that's a really good one. We bought this for our church last year, and it's a very good resource. It's praise and worship from Word Music. It's volume 8, or I think we bought the volume 7. But it's a great resource because it's similar to the celebration hymnal. This is only the selections for more contemporary music, and it has the downloadable versions of each arrangement. We bought it. The volume 7 had a finale notation software available, so we bought it for our church, and it's you can open the file, and it's easier to adapt to your own church ensemble. Get rid of the parts that you don't need, and reduce everything for your church. It's a great resource that I highly recommend that you have if you have a church ensemble. And finally, if you're more of the church ensemble contemporary settings, probably you will find useful the multitracks.com site, which they will provide you a multi-track song that you can use in your worship service. The multi-track means that you will have a specific track for the piano part, the specific part for the guitar. They have an app for your iPad that you can mute or unmute that specific part that you don't want to hear, or that you don't need to hear, or you can solo it for your practice or your rehearsals, that you can practice your part. If you're playing guitar, then you solo the guitar part and hear what the professional musicians recording was, and learn from it. So it's a good thing that if you're more of the contemporary ensemble group. So yeah, I don't know if that provides some resources, but I hope they will work for all of you.
Oh, yes, sir. It's really you've given us a lot of resources tonight, so you really definitely thank you for that. Anyway, there's a question here. What do you do when your church ensemble are super beginners what kind of training or routine do you do to make their skills grow?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a real. A lot of our church members don't have a professional background, so there a lot of them are trying just to play something. I think it was slide number 3 that we share with you the idea of involve your musicians in private lessons. If you're a professional musician yourself, you can recommend them to start investing on themselves as in private music lessons. You might think that you're not, for example, I'm a pianist and a clarinet player, but I can teach in the beginner levels for saxophone or for trumpet, because the music principles are basically the same. So first thing, with beginner musicians, involve them in private lessons. Find a private teacher for them if you don't have that skill available from you. And a good place to start is just by playing the melody on your church, by accompanying the church. Here in our church, we use the first row of the congregation in our church setting for everyone who wants to come in and accompany the hymns by playing the melody, and that's it. No more things for beginners. And every time that I'm in front of the music ministry in our church, I will provide for them the transposed part for their specific instrument they're playing. And I think this is very important. Our hymnals are made or are written for vocal singers. While it will work the hymnal, the note hymnal will work for singers. It will not work really easy for instruments, because a lot of them have to transpose to play the melody. So you can provide only the melody that you're going to use for that specific church worship service, by providing them the melody and make them feel comfortable playing with it. Sometimes you will only have to schedule 1 or 2 practice ahead of time with them, just to practice to see if they need help with a specific accidental that they might not know. So you provide the transposed music and you will help them. Oh, this is an F sharp. Don't forget this. The F sharp is played with your finger number 4 for the pianist. And that's it. That will correct everything on this hymn. Or if you're playing in A major, probably you will have to transpose everything to A flat major, because it's easier for wind players. And of course, it will make the pianist work a little bit harder, but usually they can do a little bit more by transposing some of the music. I think last week or 2 weeks ago, you talked about the pianist as a musician in church. Great ideas your presenter provided. And that's a thing that you can do for help your beginner musicians in your church. Include them in private lessons, transpose music for them, and ask them only to play melody. If they're starting to grow, then provide a duet, for example, and just make them play 2-part harmony. That's it, two parts during the whole hymn. While they're growing, provide 4-part harmony. They keep growing, then provide a full arrangement for 4-part, but an arrangement, and make them grow. It will help you also as a musician to grow yourself, because you're doing everything from scratch, from beginning. And as you keep going, you will feel more comfortable also by arranging yourself those hymns and adapting them to your church ensemble.
Oh, thank you, sir. I actually can attest to that because I myself, when I was young, I used to play the viola, so I had to adjust to the hymnal, like reading the notes like that. I used to just sit in the front, then just play the melody until I gradually learned the skills and then reading. It actually helps to play like that.
Yeah, but and it also tell me if I'm wrong, but it will also provide the church member, the player, the musician, a great experience of feeling accepted as a church member, doing something that is meaningful for him and probably meaningful for someone else in the church. Sometimes musicians feel that they're not appreciated by their congregation. But a lot of people, when you stop playing, are asking, "Hey, where's that guy who played the viola in the front row? Why he's not here?" And people start asking, "Why you are not there?" And it's kind of it provides you some meaningful experience that you are needed in your church. So it's a great idea to start.
Yes, actually, yeah. That reminded me, I really like today's presentation because one of the things that you first started with is to remember that your musicians are also church members. I really like that point. I think that's something that we should all remember.
Yeah, and about that, let me share just a little bit of my own experience. Not that I'm proud of it. But there was a time when I kind of divided myself in church. I felt comfortable with church because I was playing at church, not having a really meaningful spiritual life. And this is a thing that nobody noticed. And that's sad because I had a really bad spiritual experience in church, but I lied to myself thinking that just because I was playing in church, everything was fine. And that's one thing that you as a worship leader or as a music leader, music minister in church, should always have a light beeping on your side. Is your musician really having a connection with God? Is he or she connecting with our congregation or not? And then you have to decide what to do to encourage them to connect with God or with the congregation. Very important to have that in mind.
Yes, that's true. So we should remember that it's not just the music part, but also the holistic experience of playing in church. Wow. Okay, so here's another question. It says here, I like that you started out with the premise that as a musician, you need to have an open line of communication with your pastor. How do you deal when your preference of music is not the pastor's preference? How do you adjust? What kind of adjustments do you make? And how do you work together?
Okay, this is a whole topic for a whole presentation. It's really interesting question. Let's see if I can manage to just give some ideas. I have that experience as a pastor and as a musician. When your pastor or your musicians don't think the way you think. Well, the good thing about this is that you should not be willing to look for your own self. This is music is a congregation thing. So although you're part of that congregation, the congregation is the one who will let you know where to start. And I think I did mention something like this at the beginning of my presentation, saying that probably you have one thing in mind, probably your pastor have another thing in mind, and that means that probably your congregation will have another thing in mind. So as a pastor and as a musician, you have to survey your congregation, and then that will help you to have a start. There's a Chinese, I think, saying that the longest journey starts with just one step. Probably that's the first step. Survey your congregation and let the pastor know, hey, pastor, I was thinking about this type of music. You're thinking about this type of music. Let's hear what the congregation say. And we're not saying here that you should only be guided by what your congregation thinks, but that will be the starting point. And from that on, pastor and musicians, also with congregation, will aim for a goal together. And this is very important because as a musicians, we think that because this is music, I should be the one deciding. But this is church music. This is no commercial music. This is no any type of music. This is the music for the church and music for God. So it involves all the congregation, including the pastor, including the musicians, including the congregation. So I think this is the first step. As I say, there's a lot of things to share about this, but I think that this is the first thing to do. Survey the congregation and start from there.
Maybe next time again, if we have. So there's this other question. I think, this one says, as church musicians, we know that there are unplanned and surprise renditions, and they are sometimes inevitable. What are the ways we can reduce it?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the half of the question because can you repeat the question again?
Okay. As church musicians, we know that there are unplanned and surprise renditions, that they are inevitable. What are ways we can reduce this?
Probably it's my English. I didn't understand the first.
I think it's asking that sometimes you told us earlier that as much as possible we should plan ahead, right? So when there's some surprises, like something like that, when the church gives a lot of surprises, how can we reduce it?
Again, this is something you would like to talk to your pastor at the very, very beginning of the church year. Sorry. If you're trying to enrich your congregation singing or the music environment in your church, you need to plan ahead. And that's something you need to share with your pastor and your church staff. And it's not something that you will like to take as hermetic as possible. You have to be open, of course, because there's a lot of not planning ahead. But I have been in places, Seventh-day Adventist churches included, where you have everything planned 3 months ahead of time. You will receive a calendar with 3 months ahead of time. I've been in a church in Las Vegas, where in Nevada, where a friend of mine invited me 6 months before the event, and 3 months before, he told me what hymns they were going to sing, who were the musicians for that time. They sent me also the presentation, and they asked me for the PowerPoint presentation 3 months ahead of time. I was so surprised, I told him, I said, how do you do this? And he told me, well, the previous senior pastor had this mindset. If it is for the Lord, it should be planned. If it is not planned, we will not come into the pulpit or to the congregation. Because if it is for the Lord, it should be planned. And they managed to do it. So I think if this happened for 3 months before, I think we can manage for a whole week before. And of course, you have to take some steps towards that goal, but it will all begin by talking to your pastor and to your congregation. And I mean, a lot of church members, they're not doing it because they would like to make your life harder. They do it because it has always been done like that. But you can also start a sequence of events to invite them to think ahead of time. And that will mean that all congregational things will be planned ahead. And that starts also with the musicians in front. If they can schedule ahead of time, less surprises will be happening.
Anyway, there's a follow-up to that question, because you told us to plan with the pastor, right? The follow-up question here is, what if the pastor does not have any plan either?
In specific in our church environment, in a Christian environment, I would prefer to correct my saying. In a Christian environment, Jesus taught us about if a brother sins against you, he shared with us a process. First of all, go and talk with him. Have a talk with him and tell him, hey, pastor, I'm trying to do something here with the musicians. How about you tell me ahead of time your topic for your sermon? Is this sermon part of an evangelistic meeting? Would you like me to add something? Just talk with him or her. Jesus also recommends that if this continue happening, call an elder or someone else in your church and go both of you and say, Pastor, we noticed some things that are not working as we desire. How about if we can plan together our next worship service together? We're here. Can we start planning today? And of course, you're doing this ahead of time. Finally, if this doesn't work, go ahead and talk to the church meeting. Hey, we need our pastor need our help, so we can ask them provide. And of course, in a work environment, you will always have someone above your pastor. So if it is necessary, go to the conference and ask help from them. We're not saying here to start treating your pastor and going to the president's office and tell them, we have a very bad pastor, we want to get rid of them. No, because Jesus told us to be, he shared with us a process. So let's start by doing a little talk with your pastor and then start climbing the process if it is necessary. Hopefully not.
Amen. Yeah, I think one of the key thoughts that I've really gleaned from tonight is that we mission as music leaders, both towards God, to your pastor, and also to your musicians. Here's another question. Are there any music instruments and music genres that are not recommended by the Bible and or Ellen White writings?
I think that's a topic for another
Yeah, I think so too.
speech, but I would like only to tell you, in my experience, just I'm talking about my experience, specific experience. I'm not saying it's the church experience, or I'm just saying my own personal view. God will provide what is needed to be played in your church. If you, by praying and asking for the Lord guidance, survey your church, talk with your church, you will know if your church welcomes some instruments or not. I'm not saying they're good or bad. I'm just saying that are not relevant or will help the church to be built up. I shared with you in the presentation 1 Corinthians 14, verse 26. Paul recommends everything that happens on the church reunion should help your church to be built up. So this is not talking about morally right or morally wrong about an instrument, because I don't know if an instrument can sing or not. But I know that some instruments are not as welcome as others in our church. And Paul recommends, if it doesn't help your church to be built up, don't do it, don't use it. And this is something to extend it to all instruments. I have been in some congregations where people think that the organ is the worship instrument. But when you survey the congregation is not being built up. So you might want to ask yourself if the instrument should be adapted or not. I'm not saying that it's morally right or morally wrong. I'm just saying that you have to find first if you're building up your church with that instrument, and of course with that musician who is playing or not.
Yes, I agree with this, especially when we talk about. I remember because you mentioned it at the start of your presentation, right? So even the thought of having an ensemble should be grounded by it helping the church grow.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is the last question for now. The question is, how do you get the members of the ensemble excited to serve in church when the members vary from beginner to advanced? So yeah.
I would like to think that you have a church ensemble who are not advanced, but you have like a split, a lot of beginners, a lot of okay.
Yeah.
Everything. I think that in any level of music, when you do it with all your efforts and aim for the highest quality available at your disposal, will always get the musician excited, because at their level, they're doing the best they can. I mean, it will not sound like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and Orchestra, the four notes that he or her is playing. But if he or she is doing his or her best effort and achieve it, it's like a success reached. So it's like, hey, it's good. Is there something more difficult next time? And there's always excitement on that. So I think the excitement has to come on working towards the best rendition possible of that specific arrangement or hymn that you're playing on that worship service. If you're convinced your musicians to give everything the best to the Lord, you will always have excitement, always. If you're not convincing them to give the best to the Lord, you'll always be asking them, always be pleading for them to come and play with you, because nobody wants to play on a place where no one is giving their best. So an invitation for your musicians will be, give your best. We're only playing 4 notes, but give your best. Give your best, and you will always have excitement in your rehearsals and your presentations.
Let's pray.
Let's pray. We thank you, Lord, for this tonight presentation. I pray in faith that you will bless these brothers and sisters who were listening, and I ask, Lord, for your Spirit to guide all the musicians that will hear this presentation to give the best for you. And also, Father, please bless all church ensemble that are willing to worship you and to build up your congregation. That your Spirit guides them and bless them. Bless Irene, bless Phoebe for their music ministry and their efforts, and bless this ministry and help them grow to reach more musicians and keep them inviting them to share their talents with you and the church. I ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
If you like today's episode, you may explore more related topics on www.hymnsforworship.org. For the latest updates, you may also visit, like, follow, and subscribe on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.